My name is Pearl Recht. I'm a Holocaust survivor, and I'm 88 years young.
How's that? Good, Lavender. Nice and clean. Good morning. I'm with the South Bay Historical Society and the Chula Vista Heritage Museum. I'm with Pearl Recht, a Holocaust survivor who's going to tell her story. Because we're closed at the Chula Vista Library until we reopen, we are doing virtual interviews. I have known Pearl for quite a long time. Not only that, she was a very, very dear friend of my mother, correct?
Yes.
And family. So it's a pleasure to see you. I'm sorry that we have to be behind the shield, but we can look at each other and we'll talk to each other.
Okay.
Where were you born?
I was born in Poland, a little town named Mielec, in 1932.
What was life like for you between 1932 and, let's say, 1939?
Well, the Germans came into Poland, to our town, in 1939. Mm-hmm. It was a terrible, terrible thing what they did. It was just of Erev Rosh Hashanah, and the people were getting ready for the holidays. And when they got in, they went after the Jewish man, you know. Some of them were in the mikveh, and some were in the synagogue.
This is the synagogue that was burned, correct?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Your life was there as a child.
Yes. They burned the synagogue down with them in it. They also burned the mikveh. There was also a place where they used to take the chickens to be killed for Shabbat.
The slaughter?
Yeah, the slaughter. So they went over there too, and a lot of the women were thrown out and beaten up. But the synagogue, it was very frightening to me, because it was something that I didn't expect. I was only like 7 years old, and to see all this was a nightmare. But I remember many, many things, and they're not very nice.
So to remember something when you're 7 years old,
yes,
it's amazing.
It was terrible, you know, to see the screaming. And we lived very close to the synagogue. It was a beautiful synagogue. As a matter of fact, I think it burned like 2 days with the people in it. And of course, my mom and dad tried to hold me, you know, protect me like. But after all this happened, you know, after the holidays and all this sort of life was normal. I mean, as far as I knew it, you know, I couldn't go to school. I was ready to go to school, but the Germans were there. I couldn't do it. So the life was, you know, as a child, probably for the adults, it was pretty tough. And everything sort of like looked normal.
Do you remember your mom crying, your father upset, anybody in the family crying, wanting to know, Mazeh, what is all this?
Well, I never saw them crying, but they are very upset, and I guess maybe they just didn't want to do things in front of me and my sister. Mm-hmm. I had a sister that was 2 years younger. So life, you know, my grandfather was a tailor. Mm-hmm. Life, like I said, was pretty normal as far as I remember it. And then in 1942, the Germans decided to make a Judenrein, a cleansing of the Jews, you know, get rid of them.
So for anybody who's watching this in school, a Judenrein means the cleansing of the Jews.
Yeah.
And that is a good test question.
I remember that there was something that the people knew that they're going to be forced out of the town. I remember little things, because they collected money, you know, the Jewish people, you know, collected money from one another. Mm-hmm. And they were going to pay off, I don't know who they were Germans, to let us stay in this town. So I remembered my mom packed things, in case, we have to leave the town, that she'll take along with suitcases, with things. Then the news came, and they said that they accepted the money and we'll be able to stay in town.
How did you get the news? How was it a letter? Did somebody knock on the door?
We were just hearing them talk.
Okay.
I remember my mom saying to my dad, or maybe my grandfather that lived, downstairs in that house, he said, well, she's not going to put things back. She's going to do it the next day. So we went to sleep, and then in the morning, it was maybe like 6 o'clock in the morning, we heard bangs on the door. And the Germans were hollering, aufmachen, open up, aufmachen, And my grandfather was downstairs, and he had one of these little ovens, make it so it'll be warm, So he opened up the door, and then these Germans, screamed, heraus, heraus, get out, get out. And we were still, so I remember I had a coat, I put my coat on, I don't remember how we got dressed or whatever. And they took all the Jewish people from this town, from Merlis, and got them into it was like a marketplace, like a square, Europe, they have these squares. And the whole town, all the Jewish people were put in that square. Also what happened, they were going from house to house looking for Jewish people. And some of the Polish people were helping them to find the homes, to bring the Jewish people that were maybe hiding at the time to the square. I got the rest. So let me see now. Near our town, about 28 kilometers from our town, was an airplane factory. So they made us walk from that square to the airplane factory. But before they did that, they told that they're going to take the older people, put them on wagons because they won't be able to walk. And then we found out that the older people that were put on the wagons were shot by the Germans. As a matter of fact, I heard at one time that supposedly that one of my mother's brothers buried his own parents. So then they told us to start walking, and when we got to this airplane factory, it was quite a walk because it was cold. It was 1942, and I think it was March, and that's still winter, in Poland. When we got there, they started looking at people, how they look, if they are, So they took the men, first of all, they took the men away from the families to separate. They took some of the young women and they put them on trains. I guess they were teenagers or just grown up. Who knows what they did to them. And then the rest, they were looking to see if you could walk right, if you had problems or whatever. So they didn't walk right or whatever, they took them to the side. If they had a hand that wasn't straight, they took them to the side, So my father was taken away from us that day. And a lot of the other men, that had families there, we didn't know where he ended up. And so I stayed with my mom and my sister. We were put in the hangars, they had the hangars, put all the women there. Then I remember it was like a pile of white snow. And what they did, they took some of the people away that were not perfect, and they put them on the side. But what happened to this white snow was when they put us in the hangars, they told after I don't know how many hours that we could go get some soup or whatever the heck it was. I don't remember. So within that time, the few hours when we were going for the soup, and I looked at this mountain of snow, it was covered red with blood. And then we found out, my mom was told, that the people that were taken aside, that weren't quite normal according to the Germans, they were shot right on that, I don't remember how long we were in these hangars. I must have been a couple of days. So they put us into trains. And we were, I don't know how many days in the trains, but it was like piled together, there were so many people. I can't even remember if you had to go to the bathroom, where you did it,
Do you remember buckets? Or do you remember somebody handing you a bucket? Or the memory doesn't?
No, I don't remember that at all. I really don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Now,
See, this is what my mom and I did. She'd think about something and say, I'm trying to remember how we did that. Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly it. Well, then going, to this, we are going to the north part of Poland, close to the, I think, Russian border.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we got there, we didn't do it in one day because it was very far away. So sometimes they'll stop at places and they'll put us in like a big room, where you would sit on the floor, and some people would scream, they were from fear. So of course they never got up. That's why I was always petrified of dead people,
Mm-hmm.
So I remember after staying in this, then they took us again back, put us back on the trains. We continued. Then when we got closer to this town where they wanted us to be, they took us off the trains and they put us on wagons, because I guess the train did not go to the town. There was I think it was like maybe 6 kilometers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever stayed was still alive, because because some people, before we got to this part, they would take them off and leave them in different towns. Take like people, let's say 100 people leave here, leave another one. So anyway, but when we got to this place, they put us on those wagons. That's why my grandfather, that I showed you the picture before, that's how I remembered him. He was with us on this wagon. Mostly the wagons were filled with women, but there were some men that were with us, And I remember that area was it was very cold, and it was like someplace outdoors, there are no homes, but all you can see is snow,
It's 1942.
That's 1942.
But we don't know what month. You remember snow?
Yes, I think it was, we left the town was March.
Oh my God.
March 9th. That's when we had that, when they kicked us out of the town, put us in the market,
Mm-hmm.
That was March 9th, 1942. But till we got over there, I really don't remember. Yeah.
But you remember snow?
Oh, yes. I remember the snow, and I remember the wagons. And as a matter of fact, what they did, some of the men that were left, very few, but the majority with women and children.
Mm-hmm.
So the Germans would get to the wagons and talk to you. And they came up to our wagon, and I remember it so well. I remember what he said. He said to my grandfather, because he was the only man with us. It was my mom, my sister, and my grandfather were on this wagon. So I remember when this German came up to our wagon, and he looked at my grandfather, and I'm going to say it in German. Like I say, I was very young, but I remember this. And he says to him, "Wie alt bist du?"
How old are you?
And I remember he says, 72 Jahre, 72. So he says to my grandfather, "Du brauchst schon lange mit dem Blutwagen fahren. You should have been on a blood wagon a long time ago." And this sticks in my mind, It's like, so, and then they would go to all these, if they saw somebody like a man that was younger or whatever, they made him get off the wagon and run in that snow. And they would fall. Once they fell, they never got up. So you'd hear the shots, and then you see all the blood splashing all over the place. So I was always so scared, So it took, I think it was like 6 kilometers of water to get to the town. We got to this town. The name of the town was Vlodava. It's kind of hard to,
Vlodava.
Vlodava.
Uh-huh.
And there was a town that had Jewish people still living there. So what they did, they took some of the people and they would take them to certain families, divide them So my mom and my sister and my grandfather were taken to a place, to a Jewish family, and they took away a room from the Jewish family and they gave it to us. The room was like a hallway, no windows. I remember there was like 2 beds, they were on each wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like a stove, one of these, ones like they have, that have like a thing that goes through the ceiling or whatever. We stayed, in this room.
With your grandfather?
Yes, my grandfather, my mom, and my sister. My father, like I said, he was taken away. These are the things that I don't know because my mom wouldn't tell me because I wouldn't understand anyway. There was the time she knew that there were still some towns in Poland the Jewish people were still living in, So I don't know how she did it. She made arrangements to leave the town and go to another town in Poland where there were still Jewish people. Or just a town the Jewish people lived,
right. Uh-huh.
But she made certain arrangement that we left the town, my mom and my sister, but my grandfather stayed in that town. And we ended up in one of the towns back in Poland where there were still Jewish people, and I think it was Połaniec, what I remember. And then when we got to that town, you see, these are the things that I can't say because I really don't know how this happened. That one day, there was a man came on a bicycle to talk to my mom. And he told her, and I don't know how he knew that she was there, I don't know what kind of connection she had, that my father is working with him in that factory, that airplane factory.
Oh my gosh.
The reason he worked, because my father was a watchmaker, so he worked with this man on the clocks in the planes. It's really confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that he is, I imagine told her that he's okay, but I still many times I think, how did she, because everything with the Jewish people, for every little thing you had to have a piece of paper to show it's right. And it's
Did you have a star? Do you remember?
No, my mother had.
Your mother did?
Yeah, I was too young.
Okay.
So then what happened, and then he left. Now see another thing, this airplane factory had built, it was built like in a forest.
Mm-hmm.
So they took some of the trees out that were still left, and they built blocks, they said, little big apartments, where the people that worked in this factory lived in these homes. But the Jews stayed in the airplane factory.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I have a friend, Rose Schindler. I don't know if you know
Rose,
her.
of course.
when I met Rose Schindler and I met her husband, I saw he had a sign on his...
A tattoo?
Yeah, KL, a K and an L. And I found out that he was in the same place where my father was. And this place became like a concentration camp for men, you know.
But they tattooed them as well with the KL?
Yes, the Germans did that.
Wow, because I always thought that the only place they tattooed was in Auschwitz and Birkenau.
No,
they tattooed...
Yes, he was tattooed the KL. So that's how, we were talking with... Of course, he didn't know my dad because there were hundreds of Jewish people.
Thousands.
Yeah, and they made this factory into a concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, I guess, found out that this town is going to be another Judenrein, a cleansing of the Jews. So I don't know how we ended up in another town in Poland that had Jewish people. It wasn't very long. The news came about that this town is going to be cleansed. So she went in another town. And then we ended up, she had to leave or whatever, I don't know how it was. We ended up on a farm, and in this farmhouse, and we were put up in the attic, because it must have been at night, because, the neighbors could not see it, because otherwise, if some of the Polish neighbors would see what the Polish people are doing, they would tell the Germans they would die together with us. So anyway, I remember the Polish man told us to go to the attic, and he gave my mom a bread. And after a while, he came and talked to my mom. He says, "The Germans are looking for Jews." It was all spoken Polish. I spoke Polish very well,
Mm-hmm.
So did my mom. And he said, "Stay still, don't move, don't talk till I come back and tell you that it's safe." I don't know how long it took. And I remember another thing with this. It sounds funny, but it wasn't funny then. My mom was going to give some bread to me and my sister. But she was afraid because he told her to be quiet, not to move, So she was afraid to give it to us, that we'll move when we eat or something, and we were really hungry. So she said later, So after a while, the Polish man came back. He said, "It's okay, they're gone." And I remember my mom giving me the piece of bread, but I was so scared that as hungry as I was, I couldn't eat it.
And you were like 9 years old now?
Yeah, because
10,
I was
9, 10.
Yeah, I was just about, not just close to 10.
Yeah.
Close to.
Oh, cool.
So then, after that, I don't know how she did it. We left that farm, and we ended up one evening in the apartments with this Polish man that came to tell my mom that my father was working with him.
You ended up in his apartment?
It is with his wife, and he had 2 children at the time, 2 boys.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a picture?
I have it here. See,
Let me see.
There's the 3 of them because the little boy was born later on.
Thank you. So I'm going to hold this up.
So there's 3 boys over there.
Okay. Do you have a picture of when you were younger in there?
Well, this is a picture. It was after the war, 1946.
46.
When I came from this Polish family, which I'm going to tell you the rest of the story.
Sure. Hold on. That's after the war.
I was 14 years old there.
14. Oh my gosh.
No, almost 14, whatever. My mom came there, it was at night, and she came with me and my sister. And I don't know how we got there. I really don't remember. But she met the man's wife and the 2 boys at the time. Mm-hmm. One was 2 years younger, and one was 2 years older than I. So they were talking, and all this and that, and the woman says to my mom, I can help you, and I can take one child from you, but you'll have to, decide which one. The reason that I was left instead of my sister is all this time that we were going through all these things on the trains and the screaming and the killing and the dead people, she would have nightmares and she would scream. So they were afraid, to take, and my mom told them about this, So that's why my mom left me with them, and she was going to give this Polish woman, they had like gold pieces, because paper money, you could use it in the bathroom.
Sure.
So she tried to give her this gold piece, and that's another thing that I remember. And they spoke Polish, but I'm going to tell it, She says to my mom, you keep this, she says. You will need it more than I. But if we survive this war, and you come back and you want to give it to me, then I'll take it. And then my mom left with my sister, and I found out from these Polish people that she ended up in a ghetto, in Lublin, I think it was. And then after a while, there came a message that this ghetto was taken with all the people, and they was supposedly been burned in Auschwitz. So, that was my latest time. The last time, that I heard about my mom.
And your sister.
Yeah, and my sister. Now, what happened, when my mom left me with this Polish family, they couldn't all of a sudden say, here's a girl almost 10 years old. Where'd she come from?
Right.
Because you couldn't say you were Jewish or they'll be killed too,
Mm-hmm.
So they made up a story that the Polish man, had a brother. They came from Warsaw, by the way. This family came from Warsaw. That he has a brother in Warsaw, and he was in the underground. He was caught by the Germans and arrested, and he left a wife with, 6 or 7 children, and they going to try and bring a child to help his wife. So I ended up sitting 6 months in a closet. Now, it's not a closet like we have closets here. It was a beautiful piece of furniture. It was like a wardrobe,
Like an armoire.
Yeah, a beautiful piece of furniture, that it was very famous in Poland, and Europe still is, where they had clothes hanging and stuff like that. So they put me in this, I would sit in there all day. I had a little pot and a chair, and sit all day in this closet because, they couldn't bring me out right away. First of all, the Polish language is like we have here in the United States. Somebody comes from New York, you can tell right away when they start speaking. The Warsaw people had a different accent in the Polish language, and we spoke Polish with a different accent. So they wanted...
Sorry for interrupting, but what do you think about when you're 10 years old, sitting in a closet with a pot, hours, and what did you do? Do you remember what you did with your time?
I would probably fall asleep. It was very, very tough,
Is it this big where you can lean?
No, it was big. I think that closet must have been as wide as this wall here, And they made room. They moved everything away. And of course, I couldn't come out because those apartments that they lived in were very modern.
Did they put food in there for you?
Yeah,
okay.
They would. Yeah, they could put food in there. but it was dark.
You had food?
Yeah.
But what did you think about? Was it dark?
It was very dark. And I would sometimes, get a headache. I really grew up from that time on with a lot of these migraine headaches, but I got rid of them in the United States. After, the six months, I could speak.
Were you hiding and...
No, I was just here at night. They would take me out at night.
Okay.
Because, I was talking about the buildings, they had the big windows, very modern.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't, even if nobody was in the house, you couldn't walk around the house because somebody would see you. And you couldn't put a curtain down because right away it's, how come you have a curtain in the window?
Right.
So at night, really, sometimes when it was quiet, they would take me outside, for a few minutes. It was dark. And then right away back into the house, and then early morning into the closet. So after I got the way to pronounce their way of speaking in Warsaw, I came, I hate to say that, I came out of the closet.
Congratulations.
So anyway, from that time on, I was, first of all, I was lucky that I don't have brown eyes, because I don't think there's one Polish person that has brown eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the only thing is I had the dark hair, but I had it, made up high and all this. The only thing was that I was always scared they're going to ask me about Warsaw. I've never been in Warsaw. And I was asked. One time they asked me, they used to have a castle in Warsaw.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me how I liked the zamek. A zamek is a castle, And I would just give a fast answer and sort of try to make myself and go away.
Sure.
A 10-year-old in my time is not like a 10-year-old here in America.
Why?
Because a 10-year-old was acting like a 30-year-old because of the life they had to live.
Yes. They were always careful before they spoke.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, I think of it as, sometimes I say, where was God? 6 million people, innocent people, what have they done? Most of them so religious, so for religion, everything. Why would they do this to us? Why did they? It was impossible to understand. But then after that, what happened to me, and I said, well, maybe there is a God. Because, here, everybody likes me. I'm being asked questions and things will come to my head, to answer it. So it was always, you were always living with a fear, sort of you went out the street. Someday the Polish woman says to me, my name was Ala Krzysztoforska, not Pearl Recht. So
Allah
Krzysztoforska. Then she said to me, when you walk on the street, she says, keep your lips sort of apart. Somebody said, you look like a little Jewish girl.
So keep your lips apart.
Walk, just keep little, It sounds unbelievable, but that's, these are the things, that I remember. So I was lucky too. Now the boys, one was, like I said, 2 years younger, 2 years older. They knew I was Jewish. You would think that sometimes they would, by mistake, say something. And I was there with them, but 3 years, over 3 years, with his family.
Oh my gosh!
These apartments were built, like I say, in the forest, because belonged part to the factory. Mm-hmm. And that forest must have been miles long. So anyway, so some of the forest was still there, even if they built the apartments. So that became the holidays, like Christmas, Easter. They used to walk to Mielec, to the town where I was born, to the church, because they didn't have a church in the area where they lived.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for Easter, they would go to the church and they'd have the eggs, and all this. They couldn't take me to town because I would be recognized. So, but I would go with them into the forest, and I would stay there till they came back to pick me up. This way, she couldn't leave me at home because they'll say, how come you don't take her to church? Everything was why, what, and when.
Right.
So I stayed there. The worst part was Christmas.
Because it's so cold.
Yeah. See, when Christmas came was kind of, but you're young, you would, you had the clothes, you were dressed,
Right.
So that was the two things that I remember.
What did you do in the forest? Just sit there?
That's it. I don't
Did you have a book? Did you?
No. I don't even know
The thoughts you had.
What I was sitting on.
Yeah.
But so that was one thing. Another thing I remember, which was really, really bad, and I got an infection, a bladder infection. It was so painful. They couldn't take me to a doctor because the doctor was in Mielec. So I remember they had like we have aspirin. You take an aspirin for everything.
Mm-hmm.
They had little packages, and it had a little rooster on it. And it was called kogutek, because a rooster is a kogutek in Polish.
Kogutek.
And now I sometimes, when we talk about something, come up, so we laugh around. I says, you think that giving birth was a rough time. You should have had a bladder infection. We make now it's funny, but it wasn't that.
No.
But it passed, And then after a while, I remember I saw my father once more.
What?
This man told whoever was in charge in that factory that there's a part of this clock that he cannot work on because the hours that they worked in the factory, they don't have 8 hours, it would take more than that. Can he take this clock home and take one of the workers with him because it takes 2 people to hold it or whatever? I don't know what the story was made of. So he brought my father for one day, I don't know how, for a few hours, but I couldn't talk to him, I couldn't look at him, because the windows were open and you were scared that somebody's looking in and they may see or something. So the only time I saw my dad, the last time, was his back sitting at the table working whatever it was.
The fear.
Oh, sure. It was, first of all, it was fear for them too, because if the Germans would find out that I am Jewish, the whole family would be killed.
Sure. But there's your father.
Yeah.
You can't, Papa, nothing.
Oh, no way. There would have been a death sentence. So that was,
And you understood this at the age of,
yeah.
You will get killed.
Yeah, oh, definitely. All the things that I saw on these trains, I tell you, sometimes I wondered, did I really see this, or is it a nightmare?
Yeah.
But I did see it. There was a lot of things, that I was petrified. So anyway, the time went by, and the Germans lost the war, thank God, and we were liberated by the Russians.
How do you get liberated? Tell me.
Well, they got the Germans out.
Okay, and you knew that?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
We were...
Do you look out the window? Do you look? Do you hear? Do people say the Germans are... is there a radio?
No, there was planes, flying. They were,
Got it. Okay.
So you would see the planes. Some of them were so low you could practically see the guy that, So we were liberated by the Russians. You know, the Polish too, because the Polish people were under the German rule. You know, the only thing, they could stay in their homes and live their lives. They were not pulled out and put in concentration camps and shot like you would shoot an animal, you know. I don't know, after we were, liberated by them, there was some people would come back to our town, the people that survived, Jewish people that survived would go back to their town where they were born, Mm-hmm. So some went back, came to Mielec, and they formed like a committee that they tried to find out who survived, who didn't. So this Polish family found out about it. So she went to Mielec. I don't know how she went, because nobody had a car, and it was quite a, 28 kilometers, that's what they say, But she went to Mielec, found out where this committee was, and told them that she has a Jewish child that is from this town. My aunt and uncle, they left Poland just in time. I think the Germans were there already, but they left and they ended up in Russia. So when the war was over, they came back from Russia. Maybe they lived in other towns, I don't even remember. But they came back and they went to Mielec to find out if there's any of the family that's left. So they told him that there was this lady. She came and told him that she has a Jewish child. And of course she gave him the name also. So my uncle, which was my mother's brother, that was his niece. So they made, I don't know how they got together, and they came to this Polish family. I didn't recognize them, And before they came, somebody told us that my father survived, and he is in another town. He lost a leg, and he wants me to wait for him. I don't know where that story came from. So when my aunt and uncle came, when they found out I was alive and they came to this Polish family, they wanted me to go with them. I didn't want to go because I said, I'm waiting for my father. So they decided they wanted to go to Germany, because Germany sort of divided, part was English, part was American. They wanted to be on the American side. Mm-hmm. They would like to go there because they hoped that from there maybe they could come to this country.
Right.
Yeah. But they said, they found out how much I went through. I mean, I get after speaking to this Polish family, they knew what happened in Mielec when the Germans, kicked us out. They said she had went through so much. He says, if we take her out, it's not like we're going to take a plane or a train and go to Germany, because this was all, there were borders because you were in the Russian side and the German was on this side and that mm-hmm. was on the other side. It was all like stuff. So they decided to leave me, this Polish family, and they gave notice to the committee in Mielec and told them the story, what it's all about. If they could watch me, go over, visit and stuff, which was fine. So it was for a while, I don't know what happened. And she said that someday from the committee, they want to take me to an orphanage to Krakow. So I don't know. And even she cried. She felt, but she said to me, she says, "I have more," she says, "with you than I'll have without you." And she says, "But," she says, "you are almost 14. And she says, you're going to get older, you want to get married, you want to have a family. He says, who's going to take you here? So, what happened? I ended up in Krakow in the orphanage. In the meantime, my aunt and uncle tried to, to get in touch with me, for me. So, for a man to travel was very tough. It was easier for a woman in those days. So while I was in this orphanage, we were getting ready to go to Israel. It wasn't Israel then, it was Palestine. So there's another story which is funny. While I was in this orphanage, I had one pair of underwear. So I would wash it, rinse it out, hang it on the wall, on the window. I was upstairs. And one day, the wind blew the pants down. It's funny now, I wasn't then. But I was so lucky. There was another girl there. There was quite a few of them. She had 2 of them. So she gave me one of hers. See, there's always a little comedy in every tragedy.
In all the tragedies, absolutely.
So, anyway, so that was one. So we were almost ready to leave for Israel at the time, which was Palestine. That was in 1946. So, in the meantime, my aunt was coming back from Germany to Mielec, to Poland, to get me. When she got to Mielec, and she went to the committee, they said that they took me out and they put me in the orphanage. So she went from Mielec, she went to Krakow. Had she come maybe 2 days later, I would have been on the way to Mielec. Your life is all planned for.
It just kept going back and forth.
So she took me, out from there. It was maybe like I say, 2 days later, I wouldn't be there. And then going back from Poland to Germany, it wasn't like you take a plane and you go there in 4 hours. I think it took us about 6 weeks to get back to Germany because you had to make certain arrangements. You had to go through borders, Russian border, this border. There was no, you would go to certain places. You go to one town, you heard that they have connections there. Anyway, I don't know how my aunt did it. We finally made arrangements after like 6 weeks. And we got into I remember we would go to places, they would tell us they'll pick us up at certain places. And sometimes it would be raining, it would be waiting, we hope they'll pick us up, because, it was all cash, everything was money. But anyway, the last stop was on a truck, and it was a Russian truck, because Poland was it was liberated by the Russians, So we got on this truck, and there was a lot of other people, and also they tell us to be quiet, not to say anything, blah blah blah, And they would get to the border, and then the driver, whoever the hell it was, they would go out and they would talk, and then they would let us go. It was all like nothing was normal. So we got on this truck, and the most beautiful feeling that I had, we got with this truck to Berlin. When I saw Berlin, I was thrilled. It was bombed to hell. And she left, her husband and my cousin that I have the picture.
Uh-huh.
He was 6 weeks without his wife, but they were happy to have at least one person safe from the family.
Sure.
So I was, it was in 1946, I don't remember, it was June, and then a couple months later I was 14 years old. So anyway, when I came to Germany with my aunt, I forgot how to speak Yiddish. They could sell me to the gypsies, I wouldn't know.
Wow.
But the language came back right away. It's amazing. I only spoke Polish. Now I have trouble speaking Polish. Polish words are very hard to pronounce. You know,
So from Berlin, you went
to Munich,
To Munich. From Munich, you went to
United States.
United States.
Yeah. But it took a while.
Sure.
Yeah. We didn't get to the United States till 1949.
You and your aunt.
My aunt, my uncle, and my cousin that's on the picture, you know, when I was 14. So
And the family that took care of you, did you still stay in touch with them?
oh yes, we used to write letters. There was no such a thing as a phone. Who had a phone? You know. And as a matter of fact, when I got married, you know, I used to send them things, you know, like when penicillin came out, you know.
Send them penicillin? Oh.
Yeah, and streptomycin.
Oh my gosh. So from Munich, you came to United States. Where is the first place you landed in the United States?
It was New York.
In New York.
And
Do you remember the Statue of Liberty?
Oh yes, sure. But I tell you, when I came to New York, as much as I hated Germany, it was so different that I would turn around and go back. I felt like I was lost in this, you know.
You wanted to go back?
Not to live, but I had no place else. But life was so different. But it only took me a week to love this country.
So you're in New York, and how did you meet your husband?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, you see, when I was in New York, I went to school. I graduated high school in New York. My aunt and uncle, you know, they worked, and they had some money, so they bought a laundry. And it's not a laundry like we have now. We had a laundry where they had to weigh the stuff, you know, and you had to put it in the machine, you know. Anyway, so they bought this, and I used to go to night school, and I would work in the laundry during the day.
Oh my gosh. Did you ever find out what happened to your mother and your sister?
Well, the only thing what I found out, that I mentioned before, that they were in this ghetto. I think it was Lublin. I can't remember really if that was the real town. And that the ghetto was, all the people from the ghetto were taken into the ovens. That's what I heard. I don't know. But like I say, the last time I saw my mom is before I went into the closet.
And your father, you had
Father
never seen
is there
him
at one time.
That one time.
Yeah.
No hugs, no kisses, nothing. Just
no. Oh, you couldn't even look. You know, because you were afraid. You know when you have to hide something. You know, you're always afraid of things.
Sure.
And this was a matter of life and death. You know. So anyway, so in New York it was just fine. After a while, didn't take me long. As a matter of fact, I started going to high school, day school during the day, but I just couldn't get used to I spoke a little English because in Germany, in Munich, I went to a school, which was, they took like a villa and they made a school out of it.
Okay.
It was a school during the year, and for Rosh Hashanah and all this was a synagogue. Yeah. So in that school that I went to Germany, which was a Hebrew school, they taught everything in Hebrew.
Wow.
And that was, sometimes you would stand, you know, and then ask you questions, you had to answer it in Hebrew, like everything.
Did you meet Mr. Recht in...
I met him in New York.
In New York?
No, he was born in Butte, Montana.
Butte, Montana. Did he work in the coal mines?
No. He was, you see how they...
Butte, Montana.
Yeah. You know, his dad, he was my second cousin. Second cousin. As a matter of fact, you see, my name is actually Gastwirt. My father's name is Gastwirt. But then when I lived with my aunt and uncle, I was like, you know, I was the daughter. My maiden name is Recht. My mother's, you see, my uncle, my mom, and my uncle, the sister and brother.
But that last name was Recht.
Yeah.
Then you met your husband.
And he was a Recht.
And he was a Recht.
Right. So as a matter of fact,
from Butte, Montana.
But they lived already here. Now this is another story. You see, they were four brothers. They're all born in Butte.
Okay,
Montana.
I got to ask you something. Did you ever go to Butte, Montana?
Yes, I was there a few times.
Did you love it?
No, it's not. It was very interesting, but there was the mines, you know.
The Anaconda and all those big mines and
then on the bottom it's very modern, you know. The hotels.
Mercury Street.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, but see what happened. They lived. You know, he had an older brother that was going to school in the United States. He was going to college. He wanted to become a dentist. He was in Los Angeles. Supposedly he met a girlfriend. They fell in love, and he wanted to get married. So the parents came to their wedding. They came like in March, which they thought they'll never get out of Butte because they were snowed in.
Yeah.
But when they got to Los Angeles, people in March were walking with
shorts and coats and everything.
So they decided when they got back,
that's it.
We're
done.
Yeah. So it took them a while.
How did you meet your husband?
Well, then my husband's father had a sister in New York, and her husband died. So he came with my husband, not my husband yet, to New York. See, my husband used to be in the movies. You see some of those pictures, some from on top there.
Oh.
Yeah. So he would come. He was, you know, as a matter of fact, what happened, you know, that he was.
He was an actor.
Yeah, he was with the dead end kids when he was young. Oh, but you see what happened when the war broke out. He volunteered and he went into the Navy, and he was in the Navy for 5 years. So you know that 5 years.
What was his name?
It was still Joe Recht.
Joe Recht.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Pearl.
So he had little parts. You know, when we got married, we lived in Hollywood for a while. And he had little parts. You know.
What other films did he do?
I don't remember. I had a list someplace. A lot of, you know. And it was tough because, you know, when we got married in 1951. From the time that he was in the Navy and all that, things have changed with the Hollywood stuff.
Sure.
You know, they were going more into the television stuff. And then it was, you know, we were married a while, you know, and I got pregnant, and life was kind of tough. And his family lived here in San Diego. They were in the shoe business. So he got into the shoe business, which he hated.
Was that in North Park?
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. And I worked in the shoe store, too.
One more time. Your husband's father and your grandfather
were brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, we always get
I think you forgot to tell me that.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it.
And then how did you figure out that you were all related?
Well, because, like I said, we found out that there's, I don't know if you knew Bertha Cobriner. I don't know.
I do.
She is gone.
I do remember Mrs. Cobriner.
Okay. Well, Mrs. Cobriner came to California. And you see, her mother and my husband's father were sister and brother, so it was all mishpocha. So
you were one big happy family here.
I tell you. So
my gosh.
that's how, see, Bertha and her husband, they had a yardage store in Chula Vista.
I remember that. That's
Yeah.
where Cabriners.
Yeah, that's right. So that's his whole family.
Wow.
So you see, so anyway, they came, his father and my husband came to New York because the father's sister's husband died.
Uh-huh.
So, and then they came to visit my aunt and uncle because her father,
But how did you actually meet him?
So I met him when they came to visit this, his aunt, let's say.
Right, so you knew you were already relatives.
And then you see my Uncle Reuben right here. See?
Oh.
This is my aunt and uncle.
Of course.
You see? So he was my uncle.
Yardage Town. Do you still have nightmares, Pearl?
Anyone?
Nightmares. Do you still think about things that happened?
No, I have.
I know how difficult it is to talk.
No, that's okay. No, I dream a lot about, like family, that I.
You and.
That's a friend of mine.
This is you and your friend, right?
Germany. We used to go to school together.
Wow.
Yeah.
You haven't changed at all.
As a matter of fact, he is a retired doctor.
And here you are on a bicycle.
Yeah, that's another friend. This is in the backyard of our school in Germany.
Wow.
Can't believe it, I rode a bike.
You've been through so much.
Yeah.
You have just been through so much.
I have. There's a lot of things.
Have you told your story a lot? Did you tell it to people in schools and
No,
talk?
I spoke once in the church, but I told us that I was interviewed, with
the show,
in the Jewish family service. There was some other dice. But,
Pearl, is there something we didn't talk about that we should talk about?
I don't. Like we were talking about this Polish family.
Mm-hmm.
We was talking about the streptomycin and
Yeah.
So I used to know somebody. There was a pharmacy on Elkhorn Boulevard in college. It's gone now. Everything is gone now.
Right.
And I knew this, so they would send me prescriptions from Poland, and I would take them there. But the streptomycin and
penicillin.
Then that was worth a fortune.
That was gold.
So he would give it to me, and I would mail it to them. I used to send them packages, like big sacks. So that took like 6 weeks. I mean, the medicine was by mail.
Right.
And also, sometimes vitamins.
Mm-hmm.
Pills, and the guy, this drugstore would say, says, Mrs. Recht, why don't you take that cotton out and get some women's nylon stockings? Used to have the stockings that came out,
Correct.
the nylons, he says, and put it in there. This way she'll have the stockings.
Oh, what a great idea.
Yeah, so that's how I used to, And also clothes, was too expensive for me to send a big. It cost we could hardly make a living here to pay. I mean, this was not here. We just added this on years later.
Right.
But I would send him these packages, and he was a watchmaker, her husband, a Polish man, and they were still under the Russian rule, in those days, in the 50s. So the Russians, they love watches. The soldiers, they can wear watches from here to here. Everything, oh my God. So I would collect watches from, family and stuff like that. I'll put them in stockings, you know how you roll up stockings,
sure.
Put the watches in, and send all kinds of things with it, that I knew that they would like, some clothes and whatever. But the main thing was the watches. So the first bag that I sent them, they got the watches. For one little lousy watch, he got a beautiful suit.
Oh, how wonderful.
He was a watchmaker, the guy, so he would fix them.
Right.
You know, some of the watches, if you open them up, it had like stones inside.
Yes. They're the jewels.
Yeah, that's...
17 jewels.
Yeah. So I waited after they said they got it, and in the meantime, while I was waiting for them to get the package, I was collecting already stuff.
The next stuff for them.
So when I heard that they got it, I packed it, and I sent it. I got some watches in the meantime too. But you know, that second package, when they got the socks, they were all opened, and the watches were gone.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But then I would send them all kinds of things. And we would keep in touch, always write letters.
They were your family.
Oh, yes. She was... I mean, when I was leaving to go to the orphanage, the two boys, because the little one was too little, they left the house. They didn't want to say goodbye. And you know what? I sometimes go from one thing to another. What I think, you know, I was a young girl. You had the two boys. You had this man. They could have done to me who knows what. Never.
Did they touch you?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Pearl Recht?
Yes, ma'am.
Pearl Recht.
You know,
It's been marvelous talking to you. Promise me that after COVID we're going to go out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We're going to look at our...
I wanted to ask you if you'd like to have a bagel and some coffee.
I'm fine.
And some cake.
That is so typical. Now I know you're Jewish. If you weren't, you wouldn't have offered it, right?
No, you're if you want a cup of coffee.
Oh, I'm okay. Let's wave and say goodbye. Thanks for watching. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you for watching.
Have your eyes really seen